Right.
So
We're told, I know what's going to happen to you now, mate.
Well, I know it's going to happen when you go to prison, obviously, again.
Why? What have you done? Have you done something to anyone else?
Yeah.
What have you done?
I've murdered 4 people.
This is the exact moment the small town of Killamarsh in the UK would witness its first murder, one so brutal it would lead to one of the harshest punishments ever handed down under British law.
Yeah.
Have you stabbed yourself, mate?
I can see blood on your hands.
Yeah.
Anywhere else?
Just my chest, 4 inches in with a bread knife.
Can we have a look?
Yeah, and one on the stomach. I bled quite...
Right, do you want
I
to...
bled quite a lot.
Yes.
Can we go down
No, just stay there.
Meet Damian Bendal, a violent man with a chilling past and a rap sheet that stretched back over a decade. By the time this body cam footage was recorded, he wasn't just a familiar name to law enforcement. He was a walking red flag, but nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared anyone for the horrors he was about to unleash. On what would become his last day as a free man, Bendal committed a crime so twisted, so deeply disturbing that he cemented his name in infamy as one of the most loathed criminals in the UK. What makes this case even more haunting isn't just the sheer brutality of what he did, but the many warning signs that were ignored along the way. How did a man with such a violent past slip through the cracks again and again? How did the system fail to protect the innocent, and who paid the ultimate price? In this video, we're pulling back the curtain on the monstrous life of Damian Bendal, the innocent lives he shattered, and the chilling path that led to that tragic day. We've covered countless disturbing cases, but this one, it's on another level, and trust me, once you hear the full story, you'll understand why.
They're the most well-mannered children you'd ever meet.
Yeah.
As kids nowadays, the most well-mannered, they always remembered the manners, they always please and thank you.
For this story, we need to take a trip to the peaceful town of Killamarsh, a small, close-knit community in Derbyshire, England, the kind of place where people leave their doors unlocked, where kids ride bikes until the sun sets, and where the biggest news might be about a new shop opening or the local football team winning a match. But on one quiet Sunday morning in September of 2021, that peaceful image shattered in a way no one could have ever imagined. It was the 19th of September, a Sunday like any other, until exactly 7:26 in the morning when emergency services received a chilling phone call. On the line was a man named Damian Bendal. His voice wasn't panicked, it wasn't shaky. In fact, it was eerily calm, as if he were reporting a broken window or a car crash. He said,
"Basically, I need the police and the ambulance and that because I've killed 4 people."
Okay, just hold the line. Bear with me.
Now, Killamarsh isn't a big place. Within just 14 minutes of that call, police officers were already pulling up to the house, and there he was, Damian Bendal himself, standing in front of the property. He looked messy, dazed, dressed in a trench coat, and had visible blood on his hands and chest. Yet again, he didn't act like a man who had just committed an unspeakable crime. He was calm, cooperative, disturbingly so.
All right, come to me. Mate, have you got anything on you that you shouldn't have?
No, there's no weapons or nothing.
Right.
Do you just want to undo your coat? Have you armed yourself?
Yeah.
You have?
Have you stabbed yourself, mate?
I can see blood on your hands.
Yeah.
Anywhere else?
Just my chest, 4 inches in with a bread knife.
Can we have a look?
Yeah, and one on the stomach. I bled quite...
Right, do you want
I bled quite a lot.
Yes.
Can we go down
No, just stay there.
I just don't want to be in front of them.
Alright, just go on the corner.
Just walking wounded at the minute.
Alright, stand here. Stay here.
Right.
So,
We're told, I know what's going to happen to you now, mate.
Well, I know it's going to happen when you go to prison, obviously, again.
Why? What have you done? Have you done something to anyone else?
Yeah.
What have you done?
I've murdered 4 people.
As officers led him away from public view, giving him a strange courtesy of privacy despite the gravity of his crime, they prepared themselves to enter the house. And what they found inside would haunt them forever. The scene was nothing short of a nightmare. 35-year-old Terry Harris, Damian's partner, was found lifeless in the living room. Nearby, in the bathroom, was her 13-year-old son, John Paul Bennett. In one of the bedrooms, 2 more young lives were lost, 11-year-old Lacey Bennett and her best friend, Connie Gent, who had been staying over for a sleepover. All 4 were brutally murdered. The girls were so young, so full of life, just starting their journey in the world. And it was all taken away in one horrifying night.
Damian, at 07:47 hours, I'm arresting you on suspicion of murder. You don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence. Do not mention when questioned something you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Your arrest is necessary to protect you from harm, to prevent your disappearance, for a prompt and effective investigation. Okay? We're going to get you up, we're going to put you in the back of the van.
After Damian Bendal was arrested, officers entered the house and were met with a scene straight out of a nightmare. Blood wasn't confined to one area. It was everywhere, smeared across walls, soaked into the floors, and heavy in the air. It was instantly clear that whatever happened inside wasn't fast or quiet. It was brutal and frenzied. A claw hammer was found nearby, believed to be the main weapon used, and in the kitchen, a bloodied bread knife added to the horror. This incident didn't just shake the quiet little town of Killamarsh, it shattered it. I mean, this was the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked, kids played freely in the streets, and everyone kind of knew everyone. Violent crime, practically unheard of. In fact, before this, there hadn't been a single murder recorded in the town's history. So when news broke that 4 lives had been taken in one night, it felt like the entire community had been hit by a freight train. No one could believe it. How could something this horrifying happen in their backyard? But as the details unfolded, the heartbreak deepened. This wasn't just a simple, tragic case. It was messy, twisted, and far more disturbing than anyone was prepared for. And what made it even harder to process? The household wasn't a typical family setup. None of the children were actually related to Damian Bendal, the man at the center of it all. His relationship with Terry Harris, the mother of 2 of the children, had only started a few months earlier. It was still new, still developing, and Connie Gent, one of the victims, wasn't even part of the family. She was just staying the night with her best friend, Lacey. A simple, innocent sleepover turned into something absolutely unimaginable. You see, this wasn't just a random act of violence. It was premeditated, calculated, and as you'll soon find out, rooted in a long list of red flags that were somehow ignored or brushed off. And the worst part? What Damian did went far beyond murder. As horrific as that is already, he crossed lines that most of us can't even comprehend. It was later revealed that Damian had taken advantage of 11-year-old Lacey while she was dying. And if that wasn't horrifying enough, he returned after she had passed. It's hard to even find the words to describe something that cruel. This wasn't just a murder case. It was one of the most disturbing and inhumane crimes Britain had seen in recent years. But before we dig deeper into Damian's twisted mind and the system failures that allowed this to happen, let's take a moment to understand the people whose lives were taken, because they deserve to be remembered, not just as victims, but as real people with stories, dreams, and love in their lives. Terry Harris was born in London to Angela Smith and Lawrence Harris. She grew up in the busy East End, a city girl through and through. But everything changed when she turned 17. That's when she moved to Sheffield with her mum, while her dad relocated to Essex. With 2 homes almost 200 miles apart, Terry learned to juggle life between them. Somewhere along the way, she met a man named Jason Bennett, and the 2 built a life together. They weren't just any couple, they were together for over 15 years, and during that time, they had 2 amazing kids, John Paul and Lacey. Lacey was your typical fun-loving girl. She loved performing, dancing, and making silly TikToks with her friends. She was always full of energy, always smiling. Her older brother, John Paul, was more mellow and quiet, but had a huge heart. He loved his family deeply and was the kind of kid who made you feel calm just being around him. Both children went to Outwood Academy City School, and both were well-liked and doing great academically. Terry was the kind of mum every kid dreams of having. She gave everything for her children, whether it was school, dance class, or just cuddles on the couch. She was there. And it wasn't just because she was their mum. Terry worked as a care worker, so compassion, patience, and empathy were just built into who she was. It came naturally to her. Now, Jason, the kid's dad, was a good man too. Even after he and Terry split up after 15 years together, he stayed actively involved in their lives. He talked to his kids every single day. The divorce wasn't easy, of course, but they did their best to make it work for the sake of their children. Terry, like many single mums, had a lot on her plate. She adored her kids, but she also craved adult companionship, someone to care for her the way she cared for everyone else. So, in the year 2020, she decided to give dating apps a try. Harmless, right? Just a modern way of meeting someone. That's when she crossed paths with Damian Bendal. Now, looking back, it's easy to ask, why him? But at the time, Terry had no reason to suspect the danger that Damian carried. He probably seemed quiet, maybe even charming at times. That's the thing about people like him. They don't show you the darkness right away. They wait until they've been let in. And after a string of conversations and getting to know each other online, the two eventually fell into a relationship. At the time, Terry was living in Woodhouse, a suburb in Sheffield, trying to rebuild her life and provide stability for her children after the end of her long-term relationship. But by early 2021, that would change. Terry packed up and moved to Chandos Crescent in Killamarsh, a peaceful little village that, up until then, had never known violence. She moved there with her children, John Paul and Lacey, and also brought Damian with them. At first glance, it might have looked like a fresh start, a new home, a new chapter, but beneath that surface was something dark and dangerous. So, who exactly was Damian Bendal? Born in the year 1989, Damian came from Swindon. From early on, it seemed like he was set on a path of destruction, and no one around him, not teachers, not neighbors, not even friends, could quite figure out why. While most kids were busy figuring out school or hobbies, Damian seemed obsessed with crafting this tough guy image. He wanted to be feared. He was determined to build a reputation as a hard man in the area. But truthfully, most of it was just smoke and mirrors, a performance, a persona he wore like a mask. Behind all the bravado, there was nothing genuinely impressive, just insecurity, violence, and a whole lot of disturbing behavior. From a young age, Damian had already found himself involved in petty crimes, shoplifting, theft, and random acts of vandalism. And once that door opened, things escalated quickly. Those who knew him growing up often said his #1 goal wasn't to succeed in life or even to survive. It was simply to be seen as dangerous. He even tried his hand at cage fighting, which, based on multiple reports, didn't go well for him. He failed more often than he succeeded, yet he still clung to this aggressive persona. He had True Blue tattooed across his knuckles, Chelsea Football Club's famous slogan, but ironically, despite being such a supposed superfan, he had never once seen a Chelsea match live. It was all for show. Even more disturbing, he reportedly had Nazi-related tattoos inked on his legs. But if you asked him anything about the ideology or history behind them, he couldn't tell you a single fact. There was no real belief behind the symbols. It was just part of the performance, a costume for the bad boy role he so desperately wanted to play. According to several people who knew him in Swindon, Damian had also bragged about killing his friend's dog, saying that when she couldn't afford to have it put down, he offered to do it himself with a brick. Now, let's hope to God that was just one of his lies. But multiple people around him say it actually happened. That's where things take a chilling turn, because torturing or killing animals That's not just cruelty, it's a well-documented early warning sign of future violence, especially in cases of extreme criminal behavior. And he didn't stop there. It's been said that he also got pleasure from torturing kittens. Again, these aren't rumors whispered in passing. These are things that came up again and again when people looked into his past. And if you think that sounds like the behavior of a deeply unstable individual, well, you'd be absolutely right. Damian even claimed to have multiple personalities, though this was never professionally diagnosed. He told people he could snap at any moment. He had this twisted little rule. He'd give people 3 warnings and over, and if they crossed him a 3rd time, then all bets were off. No one was safe. That kind of volatility made him dangerous, unpredictable, and incapable of normal relationships. Of course, someone living with that level of chaos was bound to struggle with substance abuse too. Damian had long-standing problems with alcohol and drugs, and he never seemed to care about getting help. His habits controlled him, and because of that, he was always either in trouble or teetering on the edge of it. Over the years, his criminal record stacked up like a rap sheet out of a movie. We're talking about attempted robbery, armed robbery, assault, possession of a weapon, and grievous bodily harm. One incident in 2015 really shows the kind of man he was. He tried to rob a local convenience store with a knife. But when the elderly shopkeeper grabbed a golf club and came at him, Damian ran away. So much for being the tough guy, right? He was a coward, plain and simple. Now, here's the part that's both frustrating and heartbreaking. Terry had no idea about any of this. When she met Damian online, he didn't come off as a dangerous criminal or a violent abuser. He came off like many people do on the internet, normal, maybe even charming. And that's the terrifying truth about dating apps. While they can help connect people, they also make it dangerously easy for someone to hide who they really are. Behind a profile picture and a few carefully crafted messages, anyone can look like a great catch. The internet is full of liars, manipulators, and worse, and it's so easy to fall for someone's act when all you're seeing is the version they want you to see. Unfortunately, it didn't take long for him to work his way into Terry's life. It had only been a few months into their relationship when Terry's friends started to notice something wasn't right. Whispers about Damian's past started to circulate, rumors of violent outbursts, past charges, and even criminal convictions. These stories weren't just petty gossip either. They were red flags, warning signs that something dark was sitting just below the surface. Terry's own mother, Angela, was deeply worried. She didn't like the way Damian seemed to take over so quickly. She could sense that something about him was off. And like any loving mother, she begged her daughter to reconsider the relationship. She warned her repeatedly, sometimes gently, other times more urgently, that Damian might not be safe, especially around the kids. And sadly, that mother's intuition turned out to be heartbreakingly accurate. But Terry, being the gentle and compassionate woman that she was, believed in second chances. She believed that people could change. She saw Damian's flaws, sure, but she also saw what she thought was potential. Maybe he just needed a stable home, a bit of love, a supportive environment. Maybe he'd rise to the occasion. So in September of 2020, only 5 months after meeting him online, Terry made the life-altering decision to move Damian into her home in Killamarsh. It's worth mentioning here, Swindon, where Damian was from, is nearly 200 miles away from Killamarsh. That's a massive relocation. And for someone you only just met on Tinder, it's the kind of decision that, looking back, feels riddled with red flags. But Terry wasn't foolish. She was hopeful. She had just found out she was pregnant, and in that moment, it probably felt like a reason to believe. Maybe this child would give Damian a reason to become responsible. Maybe the baby would bring out a softer, more nurturing side of him. That's what she hoped for. But Damian hadn't changed. Not even close. His issues ran deep, far beyond what Terry could ever fix with love and kindness. Even during his time in prison, he had been a mess. Cellmates would later describe him as being constantly high, barely functioning, and completely lost to the haze of synthetic drugs like spice. For those who don't know, spice is a synthetic cannabinoid that's cheap, accessible, and extremely dangerous. It's wreaked havoc across the UK, particularly in prisons. And Damian, he was one of its most chaotic consumers. So when Damian moved into Terry's home in Killamarsh, he didn't come with a clean slate. He came under heavy supervision. At the time, he was already on probation for arson-related offenses. He was supposed to be reporting to an officer weekly. On top of that, he was required to wear an electronic ankle monitor and follow a strict curfew, meaning he couldn't leave the house without permission. But what's truly chilling is the fact that he was allowed to be bailed into a home that had 2 young children living inside. Neither John Paul nor Lacey were related to him. Yet no one from the probation office seemed to raise an eyebrow. No one asked if this was a safe idea. No one intervened. And honestly, how this wasn't flagged remains one of the most disturbing oversights in this entire tragedy. The arson conviction he was on probation for? Just another moment of reckless behavior while under the influence of hard drugs. Over the years, Damian had become heavily dependent on a cocktail of substances. He told people he was clean. He told Terry he was turning things around. But that, like most things with him, was a lie. And tragically, his drug use would become impossible to hide on one horrifying day. Saturday, the 18th of September, 2021. That weekend, the Harris Bendal household was buzzing with activity. The whole family was home, and Lacey had invited her close friend, Connie Gent, over for a sleepover. The 2 young girls had big plans. They were raising money for cancer awareness, a cause close to their hearts. So they spent the day baking cakes and sweets, excited to sell them at the park. It was the kind of wholesome, innocent activity that makes you believe in the goodness of the world. And that day, someone snapped a photo of the girls smiling brightly, full of hope and joy. What no one knew then, what no one could have known, was that it would be the last photo ever taken of them alive. Just hours after that final photo was taken, everything would shatter. The 2 young girls, Lacey and Connie, would be dead, alongside Terry and her son John Paul. And the reason behind this horrific tragedy is all because of Damian Bendal. What happened next is almost too brutal to imagine. After running through his stockpile of weed and alcohol, Damian began consuming cocaine, 3 to 4 bags of it, throughout the day. The drug use escalated, pushing him into a dangerous blackout state. When he realized he had run out, he desperately tried calling his dealer, making several attempts with no luck. That's when he snapped. In that moment, all sense of reason and humanity vanished. Phone data later revealed that everything that followed happened within a horrifying span of just 18 minutes. Fueled by rage and drugs, Damian picked up a claw hammer. His first target was Terry. He attacked her in the living room, killing her, and the unborn child she was carrying. Then he marched upstairs and found John Paul in the bathroom. He murdered him too. Next, Damian turned his fury on Connie Gent, Lacey's friend, before finally abusing and killing Lacey herself. And the details only get more disturbing. Autopsy reports later confirmed that Lacey had been abused multiple times throughout the night. Damian had even positioned a mirror in the room so he could watch himself carry out the abuse. By 6 the next morning, Damian casually grabbed John Paul's Xbox and walked out of the house, intending to sell it to buy more drugs. Phone records show he continued trying to contact his dealer. He even booked a cab, and when the driver asked how his night had been, he calmly replied, "Not too bad, a bit mad." Surveillance cameras caught him walking through Sheffield, Xbox in hand. After that, he returned home, called his mother while stopping at a convenience store, and was caught on CCTV buying cigarettes. Blood still visible on his hands. Back at the house, he made a weak attempt to take his own life using a bread knife, then called emergency services. Over the phone, he chillingly confessed, "The whole house is covered in claret. I used a hammer. Obviously, I'm going to prison because I murdered 4 people. I bet you don't get 4 murders in Killamarsh, do you?" Officers rushed to the scene, and if you thought things couldn't get darker, when Damian was taken into custody, he openly admitted to the murders and even smirked while asking if killing Terry's unborn baby meant he technically murdered 5 people instead of 4. Just 6 days later, on September the 24th, 2021, Damian appeared at Derby Crown Court. After 15 months of investigation and court proceedings, on December the 21st, 2022, he was found guilty on 4 counts of murder and 1 count of sexual assault. He was sentenced to a whole life term in prison, meaning he will never, under any circumstances, be released. In the UK, whole life sentences are rare, reserved only for the most dangerous criminals. They're given when there's no hope for rehabilitation. And while that may sound like justice, the legal process uncovered something even more disturbing. An inquest into the case revealed that there were 51 separate failures made by the probation system, failures that directly contributed to Damian being out of prison and allowed to live in Terry's home. He had once been accused of having an inappropriate relationship with a 16-year-old girl in foster care, but this wasn't properly recorded in his file. Even more alarming, when he openly threatened to kill his partner and her children if things went wrong, the officer monitoring his electronic tag failed to report it. If this threat had been documented, Damian would never have been allowed to stay in the same home. Another key error, his risk level was marked as medium instead of high. If he'd been assessed correctly, his previous suspended sentence for arson would have likely landed him behind bars, keeping him far from Terry and her family. The probation officers involved in the case later admitted they were overworked and understaffed. Some even confessed to only reviewing 2 out of the 10 available background reports on Damian. Because of these severe oversights, one officer was dismissed for gross misconduct. Although the real victims were Terry, John Paul, Lacey, and Connie, it's their families who now carry the unbearable weight of this loss. Terry's parents, Angela and Lawrence, were heartbroken and furious. When the findings of the inquest were made public, they released a powerful statement. The probation service failed to protect and keep our family safe. They are now gone. This must never happen again. For many years, they have been failing women and children at risk from violent men with a history of domestic abuse. The senior coroner overseeing the case didn't hold back either. In his remarks, he called out the probation service for trying to blame their failure on the COVID-19 pandemic. He stated that the pandemic does not explain the totality of the acts, omissions, or failures of the probation service. The service itself eventually admitted that they fell short on almost every level. They pledged to reform their broken system, and to help that happen, the government approved an additional £5 million in annual funding, but with strict conditions. The money must go toward improving infrastructure and training probation officers to a higher standard. But as we all know, for these 4 innocent victims, that promise came far too late. Jason Bennett, the father of Lacey and John Paul, shared several heartbreaking videos on social media, showing how deeply he loved his children and how unbearable the pain of losing them has been. His grief was raw, honest, and unimaginable. It offered the world a glimpse into the shattered heart of a father who had lost everything in the most brutal way.
Go on then. Stand up. Stand up then. Stand up. No, you've got to stand up while she's doing it. Go on, Lane. Push it. Go on, stand up. Stand up then. No, try and stand up.
In the aftermath of the tragedy, neighbors placed a memorial plate on a tree outside the family home. It read, "Where angels sang and played. Fly high, little ones." The house itself remained abandoned. No one wanted to live in a place marked by such sorrow and violence. Eventually, it was boarded up for good. Even the neighbors in the adjoining home asked to be relocated. The pain was too close, too real. After everyone had moved out, Sheffield Council made the final decision to demolish the entire building. In its place now stands an extension of the park next door, a quiet green space, a peaceful resting place where once stood a house filled with unimaginable horror. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Damian Bendal received the punishment he truly deserved? Or do you feel like something is still missing? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you've made it this far, be sure to check out this next video. I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you once again for watching.